Year 12s, it's Mr. CHEN-KE here. Sorry that I can't be there today to take our double period. I'm at middle school athletics, but rest assured you're going to be well supported by the incredible Mrs. Coace. And before I actually begin this short video, which will guide you through today's double lesson, I wanted to give a big shout out to Miss Loke. These slides are very much inspired by some of the resources that Miss Loke has been using with her Year 12 class. And it was born out of a conversation that I had with her about how she is supporting her students to come up with better ideas for their writing. So I'm hoping the strategies in today's lesson will also be beneficial to you as well. So what are we going to be doing today? Well, the first half of today's lesson is very much around giving you guys different strategies and springboards, if you will, to generate better ideas for your writing about personal journeys. So we're going to really focus on ideas and ideation today. So how to come up with ideas for our writing. We're also going to talk a little bit about the first SAC of this area of study. So the first SAC is in week 3. So that's Wednesday, the 1st of May. And I've got some updated details that I'm going to cover with you in a moment about the SAC. And we're really going to focus on different ways that we can game plan and prepare for the first SAC. So those are the goals of today's lesson. Now, before we jump into that, I wanted to clarify a couple of details about our little blue journals. So like we've been doing since we've come back from the holidays for term 2, I'm still going to be collecting your journals at the end of every single lesson for the remainder of this area of study. So this unit runs all the way until week 6, and I'm going to be collecting your journals at the end of each lesson all the way until this unit ends. I did want to clarify a couple of things though. The second point that you see on the screen right now. Now, for the remainder of this unit, we will focus on populating our journals with low-stakes writing pieces. And what I mean by low-stakes writing pieces, it's those written pieces that we've actually already been doing quite a lot in class. It's oftentimes low pressure. Sometimes they're timed, like those 10-minute writing tasks that we do, but sometimes they're just free writes or quick writes. So things like short texts that we write after we analyze mentor texts, incomplete drafts of writing, your musings. So in other words, simply your ideas, your doodling about personal journeys. All those things are considered pieces of low stakes writing. So we're going to pivot our focus very much towards low stakes written pieces rather than writing complete pieces of writing in class. The third dot point is quite important as well, and I appreciate your patience as I've been trying to find out a little bit more information about this. We have come to the decision, though, that you cannot paste written pieces that you have worked on outside of class into your blue journal. Okay? So you can't, for example, work on a piece at home, type it up, print it out, and then paste it in your journal. However, this should not preclude you from working on English outside of school hours, outside of class hours, okay? I would still highly encourage that at home, in your study periods, outside of school, you are continuously developing ideas to write about personal journeys. You are continuously practicing different forms and types of writing at home, and that you are continuously engaging with some of the mentor texts and the ideas that we have discussed and explored so far in class. Okay, so if you do have any further questions about how we're going to be using our journals for the remainder of this unit, please let me know. Again, I'm going to, over the next couple lessons, clarify a couple more details with you. But yes, please let me know tomorrow if you do require some further information. Now, I wanted to talk about what we know so far about the creating text unit. And I wanted to give you a little bit more information about the first of the 2 SACs for this unit. Now, for SAC number 1, I can confirm that students will have to create a piece of writing that is responding to an unseen title. In other words, on the day of SAC 1, you're going to get a title and you have to write a piece using that title as inspiration. I should clarify as well, you must use that title for whatever piece you write. Okay? Now, we know that the written piece that you have to produce needs to respond to or explore the framework of personal journeys. And we know that there are a myriad of things that we could write about. We could write about key events that have happened in our life so far and that have really shaped who we are today and our identity. We've spoken a little bit in class about stories about movement, migration, and disruption. We've also spoken a little bit about stories about diversity and change. Okay? Writing about personal journeys also means you can write about personal milestones, achievements that you have achieved so far in your life, moments and events that have been personally very, very important to you and significant to you. Okay? So we've done actually a lot of work around unpacking what personal journeys actually means and then thinking about what kinds of things we can write that will explore personal journeys. What else do we already know? Well, we know that whatever piece we write needs to have a clear purpose. Okay? And the 4 purposes that we've covered in class are to express, to explain, to reflect, and or to argue. Now, the and or there is key because even though these are 4 distinct purposes, the piece that you produce for the first SAC can be a hybrid piece. You could write a reflective piece that has expressive or argumentative elements, for example. All right. So don't be afraid to cover more than a singular purpose. If you do that, though, you need to be deliberate in your decisions and you need to actually think about, well, why am I doing more than one purpose? What purpose does multiple purposes serve in my writing, if you will? Okay. We also know that every piece that we create needs to be guided by a specific audience and a specific context. And we also know that we need to be very careful in our selection of form. So are we writing a memoir, a speech, a letter, a monologue, short story? There are so many different types of essays we can write. Are we writing like an expose or a feature article? So the form that we choose is very important because each of these forms necessitates different conventions and different styles of writing. Okay. Similarly, when we write a response, we need to think very carefully about who we are writing for. And that brings us to audience. So remember that whatever writing you produce is being assessed. So your writing needs to actually express a certain level of maturity and sophistication through its language. So I want you to consider some of those dot points when you're writing in context of audience. Cultural understanding. Does the writer share the same cultural understanding as the audience? Formality. So the writing that you produce and register, what level of formality would be most appropriate for your intended audience? If you're writing towards a younger audience, are you using specific language, some slang? Are you making certain allusions and references that they would understand? Yeah. Site is important as well. Where will this writing appear and where will the audience receive it? Think about the dichotomy between public and private and how those different modes and how those different, arenas impact how writing and how a message is received. I think of Danger of a Single Story, that Nietzsche performs that as a TED Talk in front of a crowd. So how does that audience, that live audience, if you will, dictate the way that she uses things like intonation and volume, and how does that dictate her delivery of her piece? Okay. Values and beliefs. Does your intended audience already share similar values and beliefs with you? Or are you actually trying to change how they think? And if so, how are you going to do that? And how does that impact the manner in which you construct your written response? Okay. So audience is very important to consider. Other things that we already know that we've already covered in this unit. We did a lesson around showing and not telling last term. It's really important that no matter what kind of form that you write in, whether it's a memoir or a short story, It's important that you show emotions rather than simply tell the reader or the audience what those emotions are. Formatting and structure changes how we read a piece as well. We're going to look at Binyan tomorrow in our Friday Period 7 lesson, which is, if you remember from the frameworks incursion, structured through little sections that are titled with subheadings. The formatting of a piece changes how we consume it and how we read it. Okay? We've also spoken about in class memories and stories in our lives and uncovering them and using them as inspiration and as sort of fodder for our own writing. Okay? So far, I've looked at two of the 4 mandated mentor texts, Red Plastic Chair by Amy Dwan and The Danger of a Single Story by DJ. Okay? Think about the ideas that both of those texts touch on and how you can take some of those ideas and incorporate them into your own writing. Think about some of the language features and structural features that we've looked at that exist in those 2 texts. We've just finished talking about the use of motif in Red Plastic Chair, for example, and we've looked at how we can use motif as a way to add structure and a skeleton to a piece of writing. We've also looked at a variety of pieces that explain, reflect, and argue. And think back to that frameworks incursion where Complete Theatre Works and the awesome presenters unpacked the 4 different mentor texts. What ideas, what inspiration can you gain from that incursion? Now, I wanted to move on to how you may generate ideas for your writing. Okay? In talking with a lot of you guys, this is probably one of the harder things, one of the hardest skills. And I completely understand. A lot of you guys are saying, I sometimes have writer's block. I struggle to come up with ideas. I feel like it's really hard to just generate ideas to write about. And that's absolutely normal. So Miss Loke has actually come up with 3 different strategies or 3 different options that I'm going to walk you guys through that will hopefully give you a couple of springboards into generating ideas. Okay. Option 1 is what she's called a spark. Okay. Sometimes you are simply inspired to write something out of the blue. It's a spark. Maybe you saw something or heard something or you noticed something and that's prompted you to want to write about it. Okay. So these things often are inspired by mundane occurrences in our everyday life. So for example, a couple mornings ago, Miss Loke saw or noticed on yard duty a Year 12 student slamming the door on their parents' car on the very first day of term. That's a very sort of low-key, very sort of mundane kind of observation, right? Think about the stories that lie underneath that very, very sort of random, sudden observation. Did that student's mother nag them to take all their books? Is that student anxious or agitated about something school-related? Maybe it's an upcoming SAC. Maybe they've had a couple of difficulties with their friends or a friendship group, and they're a bit nervous about how they're going to navigate those social interactions for the remainder of the term. Did they have a good morning, or was it a bit of a rough start? Was this normal? Other stories that I think about is, what was the car ride like from home to school? And, was there a bit of a testy conversation between student and their parent? Why? Yeah? Is that what prompted a response like that? And again, everything that you think about, all these ideas must be linked to personal journeys. So how do all these noticings, how do all the stories that lie beneath these noticings relate to the framework of personal journeys? If you're struggling to come up with ideas, a really good place to start is actually the end. So this is sort of working backwards. Oftentimes you might have a message or an endpoint that you want to convey to your audience. And what I would suggest is, for some of you guys, maybe start with that. what is the overarching message that I want to convey to my audience? Start there. Sometimes there's a message to be told, a lesson to be learned. You want to teach the audience something or simply share an experience. Okay? So why not start at the end and work backwards? So an example that Miss Lowe gave her class, what is the end point or the overall overarching message of a piece of writing? Well, you could write a piece with the intention of conveying the message that that one can only truly grow if they learn to forgive. Okay? So you want to start with your message and then think about the stories that you can tell to convey this message fully. So maybe you could construct a speech from the perspective of someone who's been hurt. They could have been hurt by a specific person, a country, an experience. Yeah? Maybe you could create a reflective essay or an episodic memoir on your life and mine a moment where you were hurt, but you mustered up the courage to forgive and move past it. Maybe you could write about what that taught you and the journey that you've been on to get to that stage of forgiveness. Okay? You could even write a creative narrative, like a short story about a tension between a parent and their child. Okay? Perhaps a child has quite a tumultuous relationship with their parent, and as they've grown older into adulthood, is reflecting on some of the trauma and some of those challenges, but ultimately has learned to forgive. They've come to an understanding that perhaps their parents were tough on them because of cultural factors, because of financial strain, because of their parents' inability to see their perspective, and perhaps they've come to peace with that because they've developed a better understanding of their parents' lives and their backgrounds. Okay? Again, I'm sort of just making this up on the spot, but a really good way to generate an idea is to actually think about, well, what's a really important message that I want to convey in my writing, and then work and trace backwards from there. Okay? And oftentimes, if you've got a message or if you've got a really sort of clear-cut directive, that lends itself to the purpose of, argue and explain quite well as well. Another way to generate ideas is to actually just mine memories. You might have a memory or a collection of memories that have shaped you and that you've been thinking a lot about across this unit. I know in talking to a lot of students in our class who have migrated from another country to Australia, you have a lot of memories about what it was like growing up in a foreign country, going to school in a foreign country. A lot of you guys have told me, you're thinking about perhaps writing about having an idea to write about, your first day of school in a foreign country, right? So one of the easiest ways for us to come up with ideas for writing is just to think about memories that we have, okay? So the example that Miss Loke gave her class was her first day in Australia. So what are the stories that lie underneath that? Well, what are the memories that are elicited when you think of, your first day in Australia? Well, from there you can springboard to, the living conditions at the time, the migrant dream, the first day of school in a foreign country and the anxieties around that. And Miss Loke has written there the fact that she refused to go to school on the first day because she was so anxious and so nervous about, interacting with people her age in a new country. From that, I think, was it anxiety around not being able to speak the language, anxiety around being someone from an ethnic minority group going to a majority white school, the cultural divide behind that. So year 12 is oftentimes the easiest way for you to generate ideas is just to think about memories that have shaped you or memories that are significant in your journey and sort of go from there. Okay? So putting this all into practice, right? And in the back of your mind, you're all probably thinking about that sack in a couple of weeks and how you can best prepare for that sack. Now, As always, I highly discourage you from memorizing a piece and then simply regurgitating that on the sack. That's not what we want to do, because on the sack you're going to be given an unseen title. Your piece needs to be shaped and tailored around that title. It needs to convey relevant ideas and messages in relation to this title. So you cannot just memorize a piece, write it word for word on the sack, and hope that it's relevant to the prompt or the title that you get on the day. Okay? Here are some things that you can do though. And all of these things, I'd encourage you to be flexible and versatile around. Okay? If I were you, I would start thinking about what form you'd like to adopt for the sack. What forms of writing are you more comfortable producing? A lot of you guys have been writing really, really great short reflective pieces. If that's the case, then maybe an episodic memoir or a sequence of vignettes or memories like Red Plastic Chair or Binion would be really good for you. A lot of you guys connected really well with Adiche's speech. So even though it's quite challenging, are you going to consider writing a speech or maybe a persuasive essay where you argue for the importance of, going beyond singular stories? Okay, so start thinking about form. You should also probably right now start thinking about and considering who your intended audience and message is. Okay, so who am I writing for, and how is my message being tailored for a particular audience? Also, want you to consider the context of your piece. What is inspiring you right now to produce a piece? So again, think about the 4 different purposes: express, explain, reflect, argue, and try to explain or try to at least brainstorm what your text is about and the purpose behind your text with connections to how it links to personal journeys. That is the context of your piece. Okay? And you probably want to start locking in some purposes. Okay? Remember, you can create a hybrid piece and you can tick off more than one purpose. Now start thinking about the purpose or the purposes that you're more comfortable writing. Okay? Are you really wanting to write an argumentative piece? A piece that expresses something? Or are you thinking more the explain side of things? Or are you really, really keen to write something quite reflective? Okay? These are 4 simple things that you can start doing in preparation to get yourself as ready as possible for the sack in week 3. Now, we're going to do some low stakes writing in the second half of today's period. Okay? You got a couple of options to choose from. Option number 1, you can choose one of the titles below. Okay, so this option is most similar and is going to prepare you quite well for sack number 1. Okay, so choose one of those 4 titles below: Tales Untold, The Road Less Traveled, Home, or Drifted Apart. Once you choose your title, I want you to plan a piece and brainstorm ideas and stories that you can write which are relevant to the title that you've selected and also relevant to the framework of personal journeys. Okay, based on the title, what ideas could you write about, and how can you link those ideas to this concept of personal journeys? Okay, then what I want you to do is I want you to attempt to write a very short piece of writing for any purpose you choose, using your chosen title as the title of that short piece. Okay, so that's option number 1. Option number 2 is to continue working on the low stakes writing tasks inspired by the Red Plastic Chair, which we briefly touched on at the end of Tuesday's lesson. Okay, so remember, you either have the opportunity to think about a motif, an object, a color, a song, just a recurring element that has played a significant role in your life, and you will write a short paragraph, a short reflective paragraph, outlining the pertinence and the significance of that motif, of that object, if you will. Alternatively, one of the writing tasks from Tuesday is based around the title, A Happy Place. So you're using a motif to think back to a happy time. So using a motif to represent a series of happy memories in your life. Okay? So you got two options, and you're going to get the next 50 minutes to do some dedicated low stakes writing. So you either choose option number one, which is based on four different titles, or option number two, which is a continuation of our work around Red Plastic Chair. Okay? If you have any questions, please make sure you ask me when I return tomorrow on Friday. Mrs. Kowais is also there to support you, so please make sure you ask her if you've got any questions as well. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. All right. Keep up the hard work, guys. I'll see you then.